The 3rd and 20 Dynasty podcast. I'm JT, joined by Frank and Lunas this week. Season 4, episode 12. Not a whole lot going on. It was just Thanksgiving weekend.
No, you're completely wrong. Everything is going on.
Everything's happening.
Everything is happening.
Hold on. You didn't let me finish.
Oh, sorry.
Not a lot going on for some of our teams, so we're already looking forward to the 2024 NFL Draft, especially if you're a Patriots fan like myself. So we're going to break that down later in the episode, but we want to hit some news and notes first. And starting off with Frank Reich nearly hitting the record for quickest coach to be fired. I want to see how long it took Matt Rule to get fired. But yeah, Frank Reich out after 11 games as the Panthers head coach. David Tepper had that quick leash, yoinked him early. What do you guys think about the Panthers rest of the season? Bryce Young, is this a good move? I don't know. I'll just turn it over to you guys here.
Man, it's interesting because of the precedent that it sets potentially for getting a new coach. I don't really know how much of an impact it would be because it is the NFL. There's only 32 seats. It's going to be attractive no matter what. But knowing that the previous dude with that team was only given 11 games, right? That's, especially if you're a top dog kind of coach and you have options. I mean, the Panthers, what the owner just showed you, that lack of loyalty is pretty damning.
And then kind of on top of that, the owners, obviously, we don't know it's confirmed, but there's been speculation and like some reports about like his involvement in terms of some of the decision making, specifically with like moving up to number 1 for Bryce Young. And with that kind of floating around, I feel like it's out of all like the coach openings that's going to happen this offseason, Carolina has to be the least desirable one, right? Because you're with that owner. You do have Bryce Young, who at this point I just kind of feel bad for, but you don't have your first round pick this year. It's like a brutal. Who's your best receiver is the corpse of Adam Thielen.
Yeah, that receiver.
Mingo kind of looks like a dud.
Brutal. Mingo is a dud. I'm just looking up right now at the 2024 NFL wide receiver free agents because we've seen it work with like
the top one's T. Higgins.
Yeah, we've seen it work before, and I wasn't a believer in this. We've also seen it not work, but I'll start with the good example first, where the Jaguars just threw money at Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, like they got rid of Urban Meyer, and then Balky just got those guys. Then they eventually traded for Calvin Ridley, and now that offense is pretty solid. They also invested a high pick into ETN as well to help out Trevor Lawrence. It's not insane to think that this team can turn it around, but yeah, we got T. Higgins is probably going to be hitting the open market. I don't think Michael Pittman will. I do think Mike Evans will, though. That would be an interesting one. Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley, those kind of.
Saying they don't have a first this year too in like such a loaded receiver class.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get to the 2024 class. You could still get
that much.
Yeah, they could use a if they really wanted to beef up their wide receiver room. There's going to be good wide receivers in the second round of this class.
There will be, but I mean, it's just in terms of the fact of like, I mean, it's because it's not just the receiver. Their O line is also terrible. Like, there's so much.
Yeah, this team needs a lot of help. This team needs a lot of help. And it would sure be nice to have DJ Moore in a first overall pick at this point to save them, but they don't. So yeah, as for me, I think the only person worthy of a discussion is Bryce Young, right? I don't think we really care about any of the other guys. And to me,
I disagree because I think I'm very curious to see what happens with this running back situation now that Deuce Staley is no longer the coach. I think that he's kind of been a running back by committee merchant.
So, very much has been.
Right, so man, like I think that Chuba Hubbard has just been better than Miles Sanders. So if I were to put a hat in this race, I don't have one on any of my teams. I would place my bets on Chuba Hubbard. But at the same time, if Miles Sanders ends up being the guy because they gave him that contract and that whoever is in that offense thinks he's better, he gets a lion's share. Miles Sanders can become relevant down the stretch. I mean, we saw this with the Panthers last year. A coaching change late in the season really ignite the offense. Why can't that be what happens a little bit in Carolina? Obviously, they're not going to come out and be rock stars, but they might be a little bit better, which could really make a guy like a Chuba Hubbard relevant, or make Bryce Young score 10 points plus in a week, right?
Yeah.
The problem, especially with that run game, though, is you've still got Tampa Bay twice in the season. and you've also got Atlanta, New Orleans, Green Bay, Jacksonville are the other teams you have. So the only one that's like pretty soft against the run, I'd say, is Green Bay. Otherwise, those are tough matchups. Yeah. So it's not great matchups. My thing is, like, do you try and get out on Bryce Young and eat your loss now? No. I'd consider, like, all right, say you guys are trying to buy low on Bryce Young. What would you be willing to offer for Bryce Young?
I'd start with a contender first, mid first.
I was gonna say like a late first,
and see. Like, I don't think that gets accepted, but maybe I get a counter that's interesting. Maybe I try to trade a similarly ranked receiver. Move a Hollywood into Bryce Young. I just think that Bryce Young has it, and he's still a very good player. Clearly, he hasn't been sinking in with the offense, and there is fault on Bryce Young, but like, a lot of it is the situation. I still, like, you look at the all-22 of Bryce Young, and some of the plays that he makes and some of the throws that he makes are really fucking fantastic. I do, like, he struggled really to stretch the ball down the field, which is a big problem. You need to do that in today's game. It's kind of overpowered with the pass interferences that you can draw, and what we see from some of the other quarterbacks in the league doing. It's almost a necessity unless you're really on point and consistent, which as a rookie you're not going to be.
Yeah, Contenders first is interesting. Like, I might move.
Young, are you considering that?
I might, if I could get like a second thrown in there too. I'd move on from Bryce Young for a first and a second.
I think Bryce Young for me is an easy hold. His offensive situation is terrible. Like, his receivers
it's really bad.
Huh?
It is really bad. And there's hope that could be turned around, but if I'm getting another, like, not a reroll, because I guess Bryce Young was probably going 102.
That's the thing, it's not a reroll
in your draft.
Yeah.
It's more so you're getting 109, 110 in this draft.
Depends on how you use it, because you have to remember that the hit rate of QBs is a toss-up to begin with. So if you pick a player that has a higher hit, you can pick a player that has a higher hit rate at 109, just less of a ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get to this 2024 mock draft. Like, there's a lot of good wide receivers that could be finding themselves in the first round. And obviously, if Bryce Young hits and, like, smashes, he's going to be a first round startup ADP, maybe second round in Superflex, if he ever ends up smashing. But, like, that's not impossible for wide receivers either. Like, we've had wide receivers go bump themselves up into that second round, first round of Dynasty startups as well. So
the problem is, for me, if I'm trading away Bryce Young, I want to use Bryce Young to get a better quarterback. I think that's the only way I'm trading him, barring an overpay. Because I do not believe, maybe right now you could, I doubt it with how much Bryce Young has been trending down, but come the offseason when these rookie mocks and things of that nature and more people in the Dynasty community start talking about them, naturally these picks are going to gain more value or just be a little bit less liquid. I'm not really sure you're going to get the value it's worth trading away Bryce Young at in terms of just picks. At the same time, if you could go and look at the trades on Bulletproof with 3 Fs for any QB, all of them include another quarterback in return. Like, it's almost mandatory when trading for a top-end QB that you give someone else a quarterback in return. And Bryce Young happens to be in that nice little middle ground where you can get pretty good value when including Bryce Young in a trade of that caliber. Like, yeah, you're going to have to shell out some firsts to get a good QB, but if you think that Bryce Young is at best a contender first, you can probably trade him for better than that in that deal.
Bryce Young is ranked 3 quarterback spots ahead of Deshaun Watson currently on Keep Trade Cut. I'd move Bryce Young for Deshaun Watson, and if I could get any plus, that's like an added benefit. I don't really need the plus though. As someone who has Deshaun Watson leagues, I'm not trading him for Bryce Young because we have someone that we've seen as a top 5 quarterback. We've seen this person. He was even looking good right before a shoulder injury. We've not seen that with Bryce Young. I would just rather put my chips on the Deshaun Watson bet there.
Okay.
If we're doing that quarterback for quarterback trade.
Would you guys rather have Bryce Young or Jordan Love at this point? They're right next to each other in the rankings.
Well, I think Bryce Young, but
I lean Bryce Young also.
Yeah, I truthfully, I'd rather just not have either.
I only asked that because they have around
Bryce Young and Jordan Love
value.
Oh, Bryce Young by a mile. Okay, so this is a little bit smaller on the screen than I was hoping.
Let me look how it looks on the YouTube. If you are listening to us on podcast form, Frank is displaying the. There was a scrape of 100. So wait, let me shout this person out. Travis May on Twitter at @FF_Travis M on Twitter did a scrape of 100 plus NFL mock drafts from the last 8 weeks to find the current 2024 NFL draft top 100 consensus. And Frank has taken the liberty to highlight the what you call the fantasy dynasty relevant the skill positions, essentially quarterback,
Right.
running back, wide receiver, tight end.
So yeah, we can start it off. I mean, looking at, I want to pull up the entire thing just to at a high level talk about the class. This is not perfect. I disagree with some of the rankings, but I think that this board does a good job of showing. So yellow is quarterbacks, green is receivers, that red orange is tight ends, and then blue is running backs. And you can clearly see that receivers are all over the top of this board.
Yeah.
And this is a juicer, ladies and gentlemen. We have some dudes that can catch the ball in this class. So if you're the Panthers who were like, oh no, we need a receiver and we're going to have the 33rd pick in the draft. Oh, geez, that's unfortunate. You're only going to be able to get a probably pretty fucking good receiver at that spot. And on top of that, I mean, in the first round, we have some absolute dudes. Malik Neighbors, Keon Coleman, Romeo Duns, Egbuka, not even to mention Marvin Harrison, not even to mention a guy like out of South Carolina, Xavier Legette. Like, dude, this class is deep. Like, these first round picks, if you have accumulated them, it's going to be nice. Like, congratulations, we've got a juicer.
I'm gonna pour some cold water on the situation. I think we're at that phase in the cycle where we're super hyped for this 2024 class, and it's about to come tumbling down in the next, I don't know, I'll say 4 or 5 months, probably 4 months, where we're going to have people that are going to stay back, right? Like Cameron Ward, for example, he's number 87 on this list. Apparently he's gotten, it just came out today, he's got 10 7-figure plus NIL deals for him to transfer schools. So would you be a 3rd round pick in the NFL draft, or would you take $1 million+ go somewhere else and try and boost your stock? I don't think we're going to see Cameron Ward coming out of this draft. other players like Carson Beck, just sticking with quarterbacks, I don't think Carson Beck's going to be this high come NFL draft time.
I don't think
But
most of these QBs will.
Yeah. So, like, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of these wide receivers fall out of the top 100 or stay in school. Same with quarterbacks. And then the running backs are just kind of gross already to begin with. I mean, if we reverse a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I'm sure we could find episodes of ourselves talking about Braylon Allen and Travion Henderson and being kind of excited for them coming up. And both of them have not been bad, but what our expectations were that we had set for them, or at least speaking for myself, what I had set for them, they've definitely fallen below that bar. So
I'm not
now
going
we
to
have
hate or love any running backs until I put them through the Frank running back process.
okay, right? The FRBP, the Frank running back process.
So,
Got it.
Listen, I still think that Braylon Allen has some potential. I still like what I saw. Trey Benson looked like a beast. I mean, I've seen Will Shipley before. He looks pretty interesting.
Trey Benson looked real nice against Florida last week.
So,
listen, he looked really good.
I think the thing is, here's what I'm seeing out of this class and why I really like it. I want in Dynasty really juiced receiver classes. Those are fucking nice drafts. Just give me 2 or 3 running backs that are worth drafting towards the top of the draft, and this is a solid class. Because we have 2 quarterbacks with the upside of potentially a third. To be completely honest, I'm not a huge fan of most of the quarterbacks past May and Williams. But they have time still to change my mind, and I haven't done a deep dive on any of them. But I love this receiver class. I love Brock Bowers. And I still think that these running backs can be pretty solid because I've seen some of these guys, and I think they're decent. So, now the going back to school is going to be tough because you are right. If some of these top-end receivers end up going back, that can really kneecap the class.
Yeah, I'm looking at the board. So I don't expect any of those top 30, the receivers inside the top 30 to go back. But once we get to like Mitchell, I think Xavier will declare, but Mitchell might not, Franklin might not, Brian Thomas Jr. I have doubts about. The other thing is, yeah, we have NIL deals, and with COVID, these guys I think just started, or maybe we're a year in when COVID happened, so they have the extra eligibility too. So it's all wonky. Like they could be 5th years playing. So who knows? I just don't think we're going to see nearly this many guys actually declare.
Well, so I'm just curious, right? Like, okay, so at the top of the draft, I think that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, dude, that top 8 JT is so juiced.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just think some of them think we could. I think some of them can think that they can raise their stock though, right? Like if I'm looking at, let me just double check this.
Raise their stock to what?
Well, think about what like Olave and Devontae Smith did, because you have that with like a Brian Thomas Jr., right? Who he's playing next to Malik Neighbors,
right? I think
and Malik Neighbors is getting all the shine. Yeah,
but Neighbors, I don't think will.
No, that's what I was saying. I don't think any of the top 30, the ones who are inside the top 30 on this thing.
I'm talking about if you just look at the top 8 prospects on the board, no position, that is fucking juiced. I mean, that's nice.
Yeah, that is a solid class. And now, again, where it gets a little dicey and touch and go is someone's gonna have a bad medical, someone's going to have a bad combine, someone's going to have this, someone's going to have that, and then, off the field issues or whatnot. And then maybe we go from a top 8 to a top 5 that are very good,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty confident on this bunch here, to be honest with you.
I like them, but like, I don't know. It happens every year.
I don't know which QB it's going to. You know, there's going to be a third QB that like rises up a lot as the draft gets close.
Right. Yeah.
McCarthy.
Could
McCarthy
be
is that guy.
McCarthy.
I mean,
Could be
dude, Bo
Penix.
Nix
I
has
don't think it'll be
played,
Bo
like,
Nix.
pretty fucking lights out. I'm surprised he's still getting.
Yeah,
played.
but can NFL scouts and whatnot, can they wipe out those Auburn years from their mind, especially the away games,
I have more
the
faith
away
in
Auburn
Jaden.
games with Bo Nix?
I would have more faith in Jaden Daniels moving up than Bo Nix.
Yeah, because here's the thing with Bo Nix is we've seen him in the SEC playing against those elite defenses. Now, he was on a team that didn't have a ton of talent surrounding him, but especially at the O-line position. But it was not good, a lot of what we saw from Bo Nix. So I don't know. To me, I don't think he goes. Maybe he goes at the end of the first round. I don't think so. Same thing with Penix. I don't think Penix is a first round pick. Can Jane Daniels sneak in there? Maybe if people are like, well, he's got that rushing ability and everything, and he's really put it on. But again, Frank was talking before the episode, like he's surrounded by great talent there. So how much of that is truly Jaden Daniels? I don't know. But yeah, to me,
McCarthy ends up a first rounder, right?
I don't know, dude. Bo Nix has the raw tools, and he the fact of the matter is, and it has been a rocky road, but I feel like he's a guy who's gotten better every year. And in my opinion, there's something to be said for that. I like players that every single year they step on the field, they continually improve. Because when you look at a guy like Jalen Hurts, he was not an elite passer of the football early in his college career. And every year he just got better. He worked his tail off and just got a little bit better every single year. And now he's an elite passer of the football. Why can't... I mean, listen, it's high praise for someone like Bo Nix. I understand. I don't think he's necessarily the next Jalen Hurts. But part of this, too, is that right now in the NFL, it is so devoid of just quarterbacks executing at a high level consistently. It's a lot of guys that can make plays off script and almost are relying on it too much, but the Jared Goffs are looking like primo, insane franchise quarterbacks.
Not the past 3 weeks, Jared Goff.
Yeah, not the past 3 weeks, but for a good amount of the season, it's like, okay, you put a team around Jared Goff, and he's like elite tier now, whereas a couple years ago, he was we will give you money to get fucking rid of him.
Yeah.
So that might be artificially inflating some of the QB values, though, potentially coming this draft.
That's a good point. Like the amount of bad, like I guess more so just like the lack of like reliable good quarterbacks in the NFL, if that bumps some of those guys up draft stock wise, I think is a really interesting point.
I mean, if we want to do a quick NFL landscape,
let's play this game.
All right. Patriots.
Like how many teams could like Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels start off? 100%.
Patriots for sure. Let's talk about teams that are desperate for quarterbacks, like ones that will, take the swing on them. So Patriots for sure. That's probably it for the AFC East, because I think the Jets are still going to have Aaron Rodgers.
Draft one behind Rodgers.
I mean, maybe, but that's not a first round pick if they do it.
The Jets would go for like a second rounder, third rounder.
Second or third. Yeah.
They're gonna. No, I don't even think so, because with Rodgers, what he dealt with in Green Bay, he's gonna be like, nah, all the picks on O-line.
Yeah, true. So AFC East, we just have the Patriots, so that's one. Let's stick on the East and go NFC East. The Giants, I would say, would get one.
Potentially.
Washington might put themselves in a position where it would be
I think Howell's going to get one more year.
Yeah, but if Washington's a top 5 pick, which they're currently trending towards at this point, like
I'll give him a maybe.
Yeah, they might pull the trigger on another guy. Okay, so we have 3 total that are at least maybe. That's it for the NFC East. Let's go AFC South. We've got Stroud and Lawrence are fine. Anthony Richardson's fine. It's just a question on Will Levis, but I don't think they're going quarterback back to back.
Oh, they're going to give Will Levis a year.
Yeah, so AFC South, no one. NFC South might be the whole division.
Well, except for not Carolina. Not Carolina.
Yeah, not Carolina.
Well, they can't. They just physically can't because they don't have the first.
The Saints are maybe. The Bucks.
I think they could. Falcons, Bucks.
Falcons and Bucks.
And I'll put the Saints on it. So 6. NFC North we'll go with now. The
Bears.
Lions maybe.
Well, the
Probably
Bears are
not.
just going to take Caleb.
Yeah, Bears
And then Justin
definitely.
Fields is going to be starting somewhere next
Yeah,
year.
Bears definitely. So that's 7. Vikings maybe if Kirk walks. You don't think Kirk walks, Frank?
I'd be surprised if they let Kirk walk.
Well, I was gonna then after this like start minusing free agents, so we could just keep it as is. Because like if we have
Just say it's a
Kirk
wash.
yeah, it's a wash.
Kirk
Kirk's
ends
gonna
up
be starting somewhere.
Okay. All right. Are we gonna do the same thing with Justin Fields then?
You can do the
Do we
same thing.
assume
with
that?
Fields, yeah.
Can we assume Justin Fields is a starter somewhere else?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So then I'll minus him, so that puts us back down to 6. And then I don't think any. Well, the Saints were maybe with Derek Carr.
Yeah, I have
I
on
don't
the
know
maybes.
if Derek Carr.
We have 6 right now. We have 6.
Okay, yeah, so 6. So that was it for the NFC North with the Packers, Lions, Bears, Vikings. We just
Yeah,
have.
I guess the Packers are gonna stick with Jordan Love. That's probably what
Yeah.
they'll do.
All right, so AFC North, I think Steelers definitely.
I'll put them in the maybe.
Okay.
Dude, it's the Steelers, man. We may stick with Pickett, especially
Yeah.
if we make the playoffs.
That'd be kind of
I can
crazy.
see the
but all right.
Steelers being a Justin Fields contender.
I agree as well. I think
Yeah.
that's who I really want.
Yeah.
I think he'd do well in Pittsburgh.
All right, so 7 with the Steelers. Bengals, no. Browns, they paid Deshaun all that money. I don't think
Browns
they'd move
probably
on.
no.
And then Ravens
No
definitely not.
chance.
So that's it for the North. Then we're gonna move out west, right? That's all we have left is
Yeah,
Yeah,
west.
we can go west.
Okay, so Cardinals, no.
No.
Rams, maybe. Just because Stafford's getting older, injury sort of been
Maybe.
piling up. I'm gonna put him on the maybe.
Yeah.
Seahawks, maybe. Geno's not looked like to the Geno of last year.
Mhm.
Team's kind of
And
falling
they're
apart.
a team to do that.
Yeah.
And then that leaves us with the 49ers, who I'm going to say probably not.
They're gonna stick with Purdy.
Yeah. So then that leaves us with the AFC West. Chiefs, no. Chargers, no. Raiders, yes. 10. And the last team's the Broncos.
Broncos. I don't think they're gonna draft a quarterback.
No.
All right,
I think
so we
this
have-
regime's going to make the playoffs, and then they're going to go another year.
So we have 10 teams that are potentially looking almost a third of the
With
league.
right now, 4 of them being like, yes, we desperate. I have like I forget exactly which ones,
Yeah.
but I did not put
Patriots.
the Giants on there. Yeah, it was the Patriots.
Would you say Falcons?
Yeah, Patriots.
Were they in there?
Falcons,
Yes.
Bears.
Raiders?
Oh,
Raiders.
No, we crossed the Bears off though.
'Cause of-
Raiders.
Yeah, Raiders were on there.
Bucks.
Yeah, Bucks. Yeah, those were the 4 teams. So then, okay,
Okay.
so we can cross Baker off for one of them because he'll probably start somewhere.
Yeah, Baker's still a starter.
Probably Daniel Jones as well.
Yeah.
Jones will probably start somewhere. Yeah.
Derek Carr. If we put the Saints on there, can we cross him off somewhere?
This is like one of those
close to
tests.
getting benched.
This is like one of those tests in like 4th grade where you have to like match the guys with different teams. Like you're just given a bet.
I'd have more faith. Like we put the Commanders as a maybe. I would have more faith in Sam Howell starting somewhere
we
next
can get
year.
rid of them too. So now we're down to 7, I think, 7 or 6. Of the
Yeah.
list of teams we listed, what other
Uh-huh.
quarterbacks are taking a starting job out the gate?
Skull Dynasty, who's in our YouTube chat, he just put in our second, third, and 20 league that he's willing to trade 3 firsts on the block for a quarterback. So
I'll give him
things
Purdy.
are getting desperate in the third and 20 league. Do you think I could do that for Dak? Do you think I get 3 firsts? Probably not.
Probably not, but you could get
I'm gonna
2
offer
and
it.
maybe more.
That's been really
So I'd
good.
get like 2 in a second.
I don't know if you're in chat
Yeah.
here, Skull, but I'm gonna send it over to you.
So, okay, regardless, we went through that entire exercise. I'm going to minus like 2 more. So I'll say that comfortably puts us around 4 to 5 teams that these QBs will be better than or as good as the replacement level starter in free agency. So
Okay.
that on top of the fact that a team that has like a Geno could just stack and say, hey, we like this player and draft one, Yeah, we could see a weird scenario where the late first, early second has multiple quarterbacks.
Yeah. I don't think Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels get past like the first maybe like 8 picks of the second round. And I wouldn't be shocked at either going in the first, especially I still think Jaden Daniels ends up a first.
A first round pick?
Mm-hmm.
Damn, really?
I could see some team like trading into the back end of the first round to take him.
I don't know.
I don't know about that.
I think JJ McCarthy finds himself in the top 15.
McCarthy's definitely
And then I think the other three are the beginning of the second round.
Well,
Although
that happens,
there's that first round option though.
That's making this draft even better if that happens. Because now we have a 9th player. See, this is why I'm starting to really like this class. Is because I am very comfortable on a good, like, 8 or 9 players. And I'm pretty darn sure they're going to be here and be pretty good prospects. And there's going to be the players that go to school and that have the shit combines. But there's also going to be the ones that come out of the woodworks and smash it. So, if we have only, like, 2 or 3 of them, all of a sudden we've rounded out the first round. And if you're gathering first round picks, that's all we need.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And just in a Superflex dynasty, if JJ McCarthy goes in the top 15 in the NFL draft, I don't know if people are still swinging on him for like I like JJ McCarthy, but I don't know
if he goes top 15 in the NFL draft, like you don't know of what.
I don't know if people are going to take him that high. Like consensus.
Well, what do you consider that high? He'll obviously be like a top 10 rookie draft pick, I think.
I don't know. Like think about like Mac Jones or think about Justin Herbert.
Late firsts.
They were late. They were late first. Like Mac Jones, Justin Herbert. Yeah. They were late first kind of guys.
I think the thing is though, you have to remember, JT, is that the market has adjusted a little bit on these quarterbacks compared to a couple of years ago, where I think that like now more so than ever, quarterbacks are at their highest value. So like, and I think we saw that with Kenny Pickett, where he gets drafted 20 and is a starter. If that's the scenario we're talking about, he's now going like mid first instead of Herbert going late first. Like I think if we had the Herbert situation over again, because consensus values these QBs just that much more, I think Herbert would have been more towards that mid first like Kenny Pickett was.
Okay. Maybe. I don't know if we've made the full swing yet. It's just, I also don't know if JJ McCarthy has that same kind of connotation to him, right? Because there's a lot more negatives that I feel like that you could have thrown at, even though I like them coming out, a Herbert or a Kenny Pickett or Mac Jones. Like there's definitely a lot more bad there than there is with McCarthy. So maybe I'm just being overly pessimistic.
That's funny that you say it, because I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation, that statement, because that's interesting. Because I don't think you're wrong, but at the same time, I have a whole lot more negatives about McCarthy, I feel like, than those other guys.
Yeah, I'm looking at from the sense of like the consensus, what they view as these players, and Kenny Pickett's got. Jordan Addison made Kenny Pickett. He's got the tiny hands. He's got
Kenny Pickett aside.
Yeah. Justin Herbert and Mac Jones. I mean, wasn't he in school for 5 years? Let me double check that.
You know what kind of irked me about Pickett? And it's I don't know, it's kind of funny, is that like growing up around here, he wasn't a stud. He wasn't like the talk of the land. He was just kind of an average player. And I don't know if this is bad process or not, but to me that's kind of a red flag. Like, I don't need you to be 5-star prospect McGee, but if you're not lighting it up in high school.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
I mean, I guess there's levels to it, because like if you're lighting it up in college and you weren't lighting it up in high school, I'm not going to be like, oh well, you weren't doing that. But it's like, at the same time, I mean, how many good NFL players were not lighting it up in high school?
True. I
That's a
mean,
good point.
I gotta be honest, I don't really ever remember hearing about Tommy DeVito. He's an NFL starter. But then,
I
like,
mean, dude, at one point, I'm assuming he was starting for Don Bosco. I mean, they're a legit fucking high school.
yeah. I mean, maybe this is just because of proximity, but like, I heard about Anthony Brown way more.
Yeah, it's definitely because of proximity.
Yeah, that might just be unfair for Tommy DeVito. Either way, they're just okay in the NFL.
Well, I mean, listen, it's we're 2 for 2 right now.
True. Okay, so I don't know where we want to pivot from here though, in terms of looking at the wide receivers, looking at running backs, tight ends, sticking with quarterbacks.
We can go like more towards the backer end of the board.
Okay.
Because I will say, I like Lad McConkey. I know he's going to be a very interesting player come this draft season, because I think you're going to have some people that really like him and some that really hate him. But Lad McConkey, I believe, is kind of saucy, and I'm going to have a couple shares.
I don't know how to feel about Lad McConkey, to be honest with you.
He's nice. Lad McConkey's nice.
This, like in the third.
I don't know, wherever he's going, I'm probably going to be picking him.
You think he ends up in the third? I think he might be
I was just looking at his ADP here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty solid in the third.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he might end up as a day 3 pick.
That's fine.
Because it's like,
more for me.
I do think some of these receivers move up. I mean, like, just judging it off this, there's like, if you go past 32, there's no chance that only 4 receivers go in the second and third rounds.
Here's the issue with Lad McConkey. First off, I think he might stay the year, right? This is one of the guys that I think falls into that staying the year bucket. And second, although I think they've changed up how the Senior Bowl is working, but he's a junior coming out right now. And it used to be there would be some guys that would get the bump from the Senior Bowl. There'd be people that get the bump from the combine, just from the intangibles or whatever. And I don't think Lad McConkey has any of that. Like if we're just paper scouting Lad McConkey, nothing's really popping off for you there. So I think that's just gonna move him down the board beyond these like flashy senior wide receivers, the guys who just run like a 4.28 40 and whatnot, and you're just gonna have those guys go ahead of him, whether it's justified or not.
I was actually gonna bring this up real quick. Sorry to kind of pivot just because you touched on this point, JT. Is there any receiver that comes to mind that's like projected to be maybe like a third round guy or later second that you see like every year? I feel this happens where receivers draft stock like skyrockets because they're like an athletic like monster. Like the RAS score is insane. They ran an insane 40, good measurables. We saw it with Christian Watson. I would just have to pull up the list prior years, but I feel like every year there's a receiver that jumps because of that.
I like Jalen Polk a lot too. If you're
that was the exact person. I pulled him up. That was the exact person I was thinking of.
Jalen Polk to be able to be that guy
for Washington. I'm gonna like it because I think all those dudes are legit.
Yeah, Polk was the exact person I thought of. I mean, he is kind of ranked pretty high here, though. Like that's borderline second round pick. Like there's only a couple spots off.
But once again, like I agree with you, JT. I think more like for Brian Thomas and for Jalen Polk, there's more incentive for these players to stay back because they haven't been the wide receiver 1 on their team, or at least like viewed as the wide receiver 1, which is a little bit annoying because if you have that season to show your stuff,
with Johnny Wilson.
Right, you can think that you're going to be that season where O'Dunn's is right now. So I completely understand and anticipate some of those players staying back. But I don't really care because if those players don't stay back, then this draft class is absolutely absurd. Like, we don't need all these players for this first round to be nice and juiced and still even into the second round to have some good players.
Yeah.
I
It's
would-
just if I'm looking to get a running back in this draft, I'm not feeling great. Other than that,
I was gonna say for the tight ends because
well, it's kind of Brock Bowers or bust, I think.
right, like I haven't heard about any tight ends from this class. Now I haven't really done my dives, but like it looks barren out there. It's.
Let me see if I can find 2024 tight end prospects. Let's see what NFL Draft Buzz is saying. I feel like this is not a great site for him. Okay. Yeah, Jatavion Sanders, they have a second. Jaheim Bell as 3. That's interesting. And then we have the Ohio State. Wait. Kate Stover is a tight end. Okay. AJ Barner out of Michigan is 5. Luke Lakey out of he's good. I think he was the one that's hurt, right? Luke Lakey. I think he's the one that got hurt for Iowa, and he's that classic Iowa tight end too.
Classic Iowa tight end.
Yeah, was he the one that's hurt? I'm pretty sure he's the one that had a bad leg injury. Yeah, right ankle surgery he had. So he's one of those guys that might just stay another year too, because he was injured basically this whole season.
Yeah, so that's going to be unfortunate if a
Yeah.
player like that stays. But it's going to be curious to see if this class is going to be able to produce. Because for this class to be truly like ridiculous, it needs some of these running backs and random tight ends to step up. But fact of the matter is, right now for your first round picks, it's looking juicy. I'm excited, and it's funny because we were talking about like we have a friend in a keeper league, and it's like, oh, Alvin Kamara for a first round pick is in a lot of keepers, right? It's not like oh you're keeping 1 or 2 players; they're keeping a lot. And man, a first round pick, like you can now put some names to that pick in a keeper league, dude. You could be ending up with a Romo Duns and Igbuka with the 7th or 8th pick in a league.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, the player I'm probably going to be lower on than consensus is probably going to be Keon Coleman, unfortunately.
I don't know.
Same.
Coleman's kind of a stud muffin McGee.
He does
I
fit
agree.
my Tinder girl JT should like him a lot.
Why don't
There's
you
just
like him?
something. I don't know. Truthfully, I can't put an exact reason as to why I don't like Keon
Is
Coleman.
it because you think he's a contested catch merchant?
No, it could be like I've fallen for this too many times, like fool me once, shame on me kind of thing. Or fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I forget how it goes. Shame on you. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about here. Maybe it could be that. Like I've just gotten burned by it too many times. I don't know. I don't know why I'm truthfully like I'm not out on Keon Coleman for sure.
Would you agree? I think Neighbors is closer to Marvin Harrison than he is Keon Coleman.
Yeah. I almost might have Malik Neighbors as 1.
That's insane.
I just think he's elite.
I mean, I think he's elite too, but I think Marvin Harrison is like.
I think both are elite, to be fair. I just think Malik Neighbors is like crazy.
So would you take Neighbors over Bowers right now?
Without a question.
Without a question.
Without a question.
Yeah.
The Bowers injury stuff kind of also makes me lean Neighbors.
Wait, what's the injury stuff?
He's already back. Or are you saying like he's
I know
got
he's
history of
back.
injury?
Let me
What do you
find
know,
it.
Lunas?
I want to make sure.
What do you
I want to
want
make
to
sure I
list?
say the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
While you're looking it up, I just think that this tight end landscape in the NFL is so empty outside. Like you still have Travis Kelce as like your locked in guy, and Mark Andrews is pretty nice, and there's like a couple guys around there, but like Brock Bowers does have that potential to give you that just extra juice. Where Malik Neighbors, even if he's sick, like even if he's like crazy good, he's still gonna be in a tier with like a bunch of other guys, right? Like he's still gonna be with the AJ Browns and CeeDee Lambs and all this other stuff. Whereas Brock Bowers, he could put himself in the upper echelon and give you unfair advantages. So I don't know. I still think Kyle Pitts was a better prospect than Brock Bowers coming out. Still love me some Kyle Pitts, but he's definitely been one of the better prospects we've seen.
Bowers is going to have better production numbers than Pitts did, though, correct?
He should, but there's a lot of like. Let me pull up Brock Bowers' stats just to double check this. And I'll pull up Kyle Pitts' college stats as well, just to double check. I think the bigger issue was just the athleticism from Kyle Pitts and his different route ability than. Can we get college stats here? Okay, college stats. So Brock Bowers has he's averaging 55 catches over his college career. Kyle Pitts is more in the 50 range, but the thing is, it was a COVID cut season or the shortened season. He only had 8 games his junior year on Florida. Put up more yards than Brock Bowers. Yards per game, sorry.
What about just best seasons? Best seasons.
So it's tough because you're comparing an 8-game sample from Kyle Pitts to how many games is this? I don't know how many games Brock Bowers played.
This is why I like the yards per game on the spreadsheet. I gotta start working on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, wait. Let me pull up Brock Bowers on this one instead, because I'm also comparing it across sites, which is probably not the best thing to do either. Let me just get me some sports reference going on. I feel like that's the best one to just quickly analyze. So if I'm looking at Brock Bowers, we'll use his season last year because it's complete. Although this year is probably better. I don't know which one to use. Last year, Brock Bowers had 15 games, 63 catches, 942 yards. So quick math, that's 4 catches a game. I don't know. I'm going to break out the calculator. I should be able to do mental math here, but putting me on the spot. We got 63 yards per game for Brock Bowers last year. Kyle Pitts had. I was looking at his rushing stats for a second. I was like, where'd it go? Kyle Pitts had 8 games, 43 catches. So he was averaging about a catch more per game for 770 yards, which is about almost 100 yards per game.
Oh, way different.
So,
okay.
Yeah,
I'll give it to you.
I mean, this year Brock Bowers is tracking
right now.
Yeah, this year Brock Bowers is tracking better though, right? Because he's got 51 catches over 9 games, which puts you at almost 6 catches per game. And he's got 661 yards over that 9 games, which is putting you close to 75 yards per game. And it is junior season, so we're comparing junior season to junior season.
Yeah, I guess the other thing with UGA that's tough too is that they just notoriously spread the ball around.
True.
So I just think that in that kind of team, it's almost impossible to receive that really juiced target share. Whereas in the NFL, when you go at the top of the draft and you go to a team that doesn't have much talent, in theory, they should throw you the ball a lot if you're good.
Yeah, well, we've seen with Kyle Pitts that might not always be the case.
It works better in some cases than others.
I'm just trying to look at who's the other player on Florida, not Kadarius Toney. Who's their other receiver?
Van Jefferson.
Which year?
Oh, was it Van Jefferson? No, I don't think I'm thinking Van Jefferson. There's someone I liked, but he didn't really get good draft capital, so I kind of just didn't care about him.
Cleveland?
No, he's not going to be thinking Cleveland. Who was? I think I know who you're talking about. I can't remember.
I also can't remember, and I can't. Was it Grimes? It might have been Grimes.
Yeah, Grimes was there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like Grimes, though. I'm sorry, I'm putting us on a side tangent. We're talking 2020 Florida football on our Dynasty podcast.
Yeah, you're throwing out some names that I completely forgot about. I have not thought of Grimes in a while.
Well, when I was thinking of Bo Nix, I was trying to remember like who was on his Auburn teams, and I couldn't remember if what's his face Daz Newsome played for North Carolina or for Auburn.
Yeah, North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, that was it.
By the way, on Bowers, I was wrong about the. He did get ankle surgery earlier this year. I thought it was a bigger surgery than what it was.
Oh yeah, because he's already back playing.
He got the same surgery that Tua got on his ankle when he was in college. If you guys remember that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into some new segments. We have.
I do stand by though Neighbors over Bowers, but not as easily as I said earlier.
Okay, I don't hate it. That might be my opinion too when it comes to.
I have Neighbors at, as of right now, 103. I have it Caleb, Marvin, Neighbors, then Drake May.
Okay. Now that we're getting back into this, I had some takes that I was going to put in my pocket, but now you've released them, Luke.
You've activated Frank's traps.
Yeah, you've activated my trap card.
Yeah, his takes are out.
Yeah, bitch, trap card. I think that what JT was saying earlier about that whole positional thing, I don't like that in terms of kind of like meta braining it, where it's like, oh, the tight end landscape is bad, so I take a tight end, and in theory, his value goes higher. I don't actually think it works that way. But what I do believe in is tailoring your draft strategy to the amount of risk and upside that you want. I guess risk and upside are very synonymous, but I don't think perfectly in fantasy football. Because like in a rebuilding team, I think that it's worth kind of like taking swings, which is why you want to take receivers and QBs as much as you can. But yeah, I don't like hearing those yards per game numbers. Like if we pull up Neighbors, like if Neighbors is just expected to come into the league and put up, let's say, 25 more total points over the season, even though that's like a point per game, a little bit more, I would still want that. I want points. I guess it depends with like the tight end premium stuff, but like accounting for all of that, I just want the guy who scores more.
Yeah, that's just kind of hard to I don't know, conceptualize, especially like comparing one position to another. Because I feel like so many tight ends points come from touchdowns, right? And that's such a hard stat to track.
What was I going to say? I did see an interesting discussion.
Variable, sorry.
I think I saw it on this Twitter thread where just like people were starting to get ahead in terms of just like positional value and like taking the swing versus getting someone who you know for sure is going to be surefire. So like I'm not this far yet. I do have Marvin Harrison and Neighbors right now ahead of Drake May at 2 and 3, then Drake May 4. There's some people that are just taking Marvin Harrison number 1 because they're just like
over Caleb.
As much hype as Caleb's getting, there are people who are more confident in Marvin Harrison becoming like a top 5 receiver than like Caleb. Like, yeah, I do think he's going to be a stud, but there's like, I guess, more of a boom bust potential compared to like, oh, I'm just going to take Marvin Harrison and have a top 3 dynasty receiver.
That's interesting.
And then so I wouldn't say that like as drastic, but I guess on like an order scale, like a Neighbor or like people who may have Drake May number 2. Like Drake May or Marvin Harrison.
Is that if you're just taking Marvin Harrison at 1 when Caleb Williams goes every draft at 1, and
it's better to trade down.
Yeah, you at least try to maximize the value of your assets. Like, yes, I guess really if you can.
I guess a better example would have been like Marvin Harrison versus Drake May, assuming like Drake May goes in the top 5. Or I think like that's going to be an interesting debate come like rookie drafts.
Here's the problem. Because are you taking... It almost comes to how you're valuing the prospects themselves. Because if you're valuing Marvin Harrison insanely high, then I don't disagree with drafting him really high. If you are taking Marvin Harrison just because you think Caleb Williams stinks or is going to be a bust or has a higher bust chance, then I disagree with that because of the fact that the market deems Caleb Williams more valuable than Marvin Harrison Jr. So whether that's trading back or trading out and then using those assets to trade back in to either Marvin Harrison Jr. or a very similar ranked asset to Marvin Harrison Jr., like those paths more times than not are just better in Dynasty. So like, yeah, I guess
I
if you
agree.
can't do it, then yes, you want to just take the player that you think is the best and has the best chance of scoring the most points. Like I don't disagree with that, but if there's like a tangible difference between the two in the market, you have to try to exploit it, or else you're just kind of leaving value on the table.
That's fair. No, I'm with you on it.
This kind of reminds me of like Joe Burrow and Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor.
3-4 years ago, however long that was. Yeah. I think I've starting to more follow the draft at ADP strategy, just because I've tried myself to think I'm smarter than the the masses in terms of what these rookies can do, and I feel like I've just been getting burnt a lot. Where if I just drafted at ADP, you know, you're given that you have forgiveness, right? People are willing to still buy into those specific players if they're not producing right away. They're there for a reason, right? There is some kind of upside or whatnot or potential. So, you know, like me writing off someone like Devontae Smith completely and being like, I'm not even going to take him with a first round pick. That's probably just dumb. so yeah.
No.
What's that, Frank?
There's cases for it because it's all like a bell curve, right? And it's being able to accurately identify where players fall on the bell curve, probably relative to upside more so than bust potential. But you can kind of, I feel like, get a good gauge on bust potential just by where they're drafted in the NFL draft.
Yeah, and I mean, I still think, even though his ADP was like lower for being, I'm going back to Zach Wilson, like the number 2 pick. His ADP was like what in rookie drafts? Maybe like 111 ish.
No, it was higher than that, like 108, 107.
Maybe like even like 107. Despite it being like I remember there were a lot of people at the time just off like viewing him in college, competition, everything. They're just like, I'm just not touching him in the first round. So I do think sometimes
that was me. I was never gonna draft Zach Wilson.
Yeah. So it's like tough because there are the Devontae Smith situations, but there are times where like I remember a lot of people were just like, I'm not touching Zach Wilson at all in the first round, and it ended up being proven right despite the 107 ADP, second overall. So it does kind of end up on like case by case.
I mean, the thing is, okay, so we're getting into something like there's a lot of branches that kind of branch out from there. But going toward, I guess towards the like, okay, do you blacklist players or do you kind of just move them down? I think it's much healthier, like JT was saying, for the top end of your draft to draft at ADP. The players in the top 15 picks are so heavily analyzed, scrutinized, and whatnot that the difference between them, ADP-wise, it's going to be marginal. Like, it's going to be maybe half a spot or 1 spot off at most. Not from, like, the actual results, but realistically what their prospect profiles are in total.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree with you that if you're going crazy off consensus at the top end of the draft, you should probably have a reason for doing so. And yeah, that can kind of bone you. Like, you're more likely to get boned than you are to hit the lottery, I think, doing that, but it's not impossible. I think with the blacklisting, though, that to me comes more for the later-ish kind of players. Because if you know that someone has off-the-field issues, right, and there are people that find this information out. I mean, let's say you live around a player or go to that school and you I mean, sometimes you can just kind of see it, right? Like if you follow a lot of people on Twitter, you know the guy's fucking crazy or something. Then I don't think it's completely unreasonable to blacklist players at all. Or if you think a player is like a round and a half overvalued, then like you're essentially blacklisting them. So I don't really think it's that crazy. I just think that you need to be kind of reasonable about it, because JT, I think the problem for you is that it's just too much of, if you're a senior, I'm not going to draft you. It's almost like a little too binary. Whereas I think you kind of just need to put it on a spectrum a little bit.
Yeah.
You have been right on a few. You're right on Zach. I think, if I remember correctly, you're also right on Trey Sermon. I remember when he was moving to the beginning of the second round. I forgot if it was you or Frank.
No, I kind of like Trey Sermon.
Like Sermon.
we liked Ramondre though too. That was kind of our saving grace there.
Listen, if we're talking about QBs, because I think QBs are almost a special process, because
yeah, they're very different.
What the bust, that bust rate is fucking high. It doesn't matter who it is, and the fact of the matter is, with QBs, it's such a nuanced position, and because like you see some of these players, I think Kyler Murray is one that comes to mind, where he can go in and just do some bullshit and have success. Like, not saying that Kyler Murray's a bad player, but when he was a younger player, there are times where he's just going off script every play. And because he's Kyler Murray, he can do that, and he put up ridiculous numbers doing that. But
he would take like 15 seconds to throw the ball.
Yeah, then sometimes you have a Trey Lance who just kind of doesn't do that. And when he doesn't understand the plays and whatnot, he just sucks, right? But how do you gauge that? It's like, oh, well, you look at Trey Lance's rushing stats and his percentage of rushes compared to throws and all the production breakdowns. It's like, well, on paper, Trey Lance should be rushing Monster McGee, but sometimes that shit just doesn't happen.
I mean, I will say, in the few games that Trey Lance played, I'm going to pull up the stats here. I'm pretty sure he averaged.
He's pretty good in fantasy. Yeah,
I think he averaged like 10 plus runs a game. Let me pull it up.
Right, but I would think that I think a lot of that came on more like the manufactured production, more so than that, oh, I'm going to go Kyler Murray off script and just run around.
You're saying like Kyle Shanahan like schemed it for him, you're saying, rather than like a play breaks down, let me use my legs.
Power, or a zone read and you're keeping it. Or something of that nature.
Yeah, in 2021, whatever his first year, 2021, he averaged over 10 rushes per game in the games that he played.
But it's like, quarterback is really tough, because you can kind of be in a fit and just not be playing well, and if that happens at a poor time in your career, that can really fuck your chances of ever getting another chance. And I think you can kind of go back at it like, there are quarterbacks that struggle with anticipation but have been really good. Like, to me, Russell Wilson is that. Guy does not anticipate very well at all, but he's won Super Bowls and for most of his career been a top-end player. And then you look at some other players, and because they can't anticipate throws, they suck. Like they cannot play.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many elements of that in the QB world, where you can point to like, oh, well, this guy sucks at that, but he's still good, or this guy's amazing at that, and that's because he's good because of it.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like what you're saying, though, just to tie in about, the quarterback process is just so different than your running back or wide receiver or even tight end.
Like, I think the mistake... Sorry to cut you off, JT. But I think the mistake with Zach Wilson or Trey Lance or any of these bust quarterbacks is diamond handsing until the end and you get out with nothing.
Yeah, you could have still gotten value for Zach Wilson after Zach Wilson's rookie year. I do also want to say in particular with that draft, it's been talked about since. There was a lot of misses that draft because it was a COVID year. And like reports have come out how like teams weren't able to, I guess, get as good an idea. But I do agree with the original point you were making, where a lot of people diamond hands these rookies, and that's like the biggest mistake rather than just like the draft pick itself.
Dude, no matter what process you have, you are never going to bat 100% in these drafts. I mean, sometimes, like in those 2021 drafts, if you draft at ADP, sometimes you're just in a bad range, and that entire range of players through those picks would have busted. And it's like you could have been like, oh well, only if I drafted freaking, Sam Laporte at 106. But like, dude, that's never gonna happen at the time, right? So the real mistake is not having a contingency plan when it fails or succeeds crazily, right?
Going back to that 2020 draft, if you're drafting near the end of it, like you're ending up with like a Rager or a Judy, and right behind that is T. Higgins, Justin Jefferson, and Ayuk, and it's just like that really hurt. It hurts that your guy's a bust, but it hurts way more that the guys right behind them are all so good. Like,
yeah, that was crazy. Like Rager and Ruggs going
and Judy,
right around there, man. Oh man. Because it's just
think
absolute home runs and then absolute landmines right next to each other.
That Rager Jefferson one still hurts.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say fuck off to the other segments and start going on around more like theoretical stuff. So
okay. I mean, it wasn't like our other segments were that juicy anyway.
Because the other thing I want to talk about, and I think this is a really interesting concept. I was talking about this with Parker on the phone earlier. Is contingency plans when your picks work out really well. So, an example, I guess, could not necessarily really well, but I guess if they just work out and they gain value, right? You made a good selection at that time. So take someone.
I can give you a perfect example right now.
Sure.
Like Tank Dell.
Yes, Tank Dell would be a good example.
You drafted like Tank Dell in the second round. Now keep Trey Cut. He's wide receiver 11 in Dynasty.
Right.
What do you do?
What do you do? Puka Nacua is obviously another clear one. But also even some of the more minor ones, right? A Jahan Dotson last year. A Christian Watson last year. Because like you can point to plenty of examples where holding is the move, right? Tyreek Hill. If you traded him early, you're probably feeling pretty bad about it. Whereas if you held, you're feeling like a genius. But I mean, just
Damian Pierce last year.
Because I have at times struggled with this because I have usually tried to lean more on sell unless it's one of my guys, like one of these players that I am just gung-ho about. I think that they're Hall of Fame level potential. I'm not going to let go of them. And I picked up James Robinson's and then sold him for a third before the season started because he was getting that training camp hype. But just because it's in the contingency plan. So like, okay, if this random waiver pickup gains enough hype and I can sell him for a third, I'm going to ship him off. And you can point to plenty of other examples where that is going to work out. It's probably overwhelmingly likely it's going to pan out than not. But I'm just curious as to what you guys think, and if you're going to go into your future drafts or future decision makings around upside. Like, do you just always hold, or are you looking to ever sell?
I think part of it depends also on like the situation it's in rather than, I mean, if you're looking at it like, are they producing now just because they're in the spot where like they're just getting like these touches force fed, and so they're putting it, like the example I have in mind is Damian Pierce last season,
right?
Where people may have drafted him like late second, early third. He had a good rookie season, but just because he was getting all of these touches, and now this year he's lost a lot of value.
I guess that's the best way to do this exercise, actually, is to, because it's not vanilla for every group of players. Like, I think I would treat groups of players differently depending mainly on their rookie draft capital and I guess a factor of their production. Because like, if my top 6 pick pans out, unless it's a running back, I'm probably not trading them, barring just an overpay.
Yeah. I mean, so much of it, Dennis, I'm going to try and keep this from being a cookie cutter answer. So much of it depends on like how the market's valuing him, said player, compared to what you think the player should be. So like, for example, if I'm thinking in previous years, like you just mentioned Dotson, right? Like a lot of Dotson's production came from touchdowns. Like a lot of his points came from touchdowns. And there are certain players where that is stickier than others, right? Like you do have the Deontay Johnsons that don't really catch a lot of touchdowns or whatnot, and I think Jamar Chase is someone who catches more.
On the opposite side,
yeah,
Claypool's
than
rookie
expected.
year.
True. Yeah. So with that, like, I know what Jahan Dotson should be valued around. Like, he's probably not as good as what people think. The masses have all moved in on Jahan Dotson. I'm going to ship him off for a higher price, theoretically. Like, I'm just using him as an example. I don't think his price got that high, but just for an example, compared to someone like, I'm just going to try and stick with like a similar year, like Drake London, right? Who didn't go crazy, but had an extremely encouraging target share. Kind of falls into the bucket of like super producer guys coming out of his rookie year. I would hold. And so, I mean, from a value perspective, that's probably not looking great right now. You probably would have been better off trading Drake London. Because you mentioned Parker. I'm pretty sure Parker offered me 2 firsts for Drake London before the season started, and that would be looking pretty nice right now. I'm still a believer in him, but I also like 2 firsts. So yeah, it kind of just depends on market versus what they've actually done so far. Because I feel like a lot of times what happens is it gets priced into that player that they're expected to keep improving and improving at an elite level. And a lot of times that's not what happens.
Exactly.
So I would probably lean more often to sell. But there are those diamonds in the rough that have very good underlying stats and the like. And there's just certain stuff that's not priced in, like Stephon Diggs, for example, right? Like he looked pretty good, but you just didn't expect Stephon Diggs to get that quarterback upgrade, and then all of a sudden he gets a quarterback upgrade, or you could reverse it and say Josh Allen, he gets the wide receiver upgrade. Either way you want to put them, and then all of a sudden they're really good, right? Like that could be. I'm trying to think of who's on the free agency, like a Michael Pittman maybe this year, who hasn't done a whole, like, he hasn't been crazy. He's been pretty solid, but like he might get
like
a big quarterback upgrade.
Receivers rather than like free agents, even though there are some nice ones like Pittman, Evans, and Higgins. I'm looking at a lot of like those receivers that are on like the last year of a deal.
Yeah, that could get traded.
Yeah, because I feel like that's where the big ones have moved recently.
Well, I mean, JT, you brought up a lot of good points because I think a lot of it, you're right, is kind of just price relative to where they are. So, like, Drake London for 2 firsts versus Puka for, like, a late first. I would have much, like, if you sold Puka for that late first earlier in the year, you're probably feeling pretty bad about it.
Yeah.
And we were advocating to try and buy Puka for that late first. Now, why would we do that, right? When we're saying, oh, if have a contingency plan when your picks pan out. I drafted Puka, I haven't sold him, but why? And probably just because that elite level production. So I think first things first, if you have a guy that just has elite level production, you can't sell him. Or at least you usually don't want to sell him unless you're getting an elite level amount of stuffs.
Mm-hmm.
So, because okay, what about Garrett Wilson? Right, I really like Garrett Wilson. I drafted him a couple leagues. The pick pans out. I sold him. Like, why would I sell Garrett Wilson when the pick pans out then compared to Puka? Well, it's like, okay, if you can get 3 firsts of value for Garrett Wilson, that's probably worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just from a risk perspective, even.
Yeah, and it's priced in pretty heavily into Garrett Wilson that he's going to be like a top 5, like elite level production from Garrett Wilson. But you got elite picks back. Like you got
that you can
good
then
value back.
Transition into potentially elite level production for cheaper, especially as a contender. So I think that's probably it. It is, and honestly, we need to put more time into this segment because we can probably map out the scenarios where, pretty cookie cutter where you should and should not trade for and away. Because I think I broke one of those recently by trading away Tank Dell. And I'm not going to fucking trade his ass right now. Because I traded him. Like, dude, what's hilarious? This week was the bump. Like, yeah, he's straight up. But this week was the real one. Like, oh, now he's juiced. And I sold right before that. Even though the pick panned out. It's like, No. If you have a third-round pick that has that Terry McLaurin trajectory, you hold that motherfucker until he's going into year 2. You can sell in that offseason. But until then, you hold him. You hold.
Yeah. I also, we're going to have to do more research into it, but I feel like the process is a lot more plain and simple for wide receivers than any other position.
Honestly, I think selling like everyone going into year 2 is the move. I just think that's the move.
So everyone going into year 2.
It depends. I think that's sometimes the cheapest you could get them.
Right, it is.
If they're going to boom and be the elite level talents, that year 2 could be the cheapest time to get them. But
the thing is, though, is that the dynasty market these days is almost so reactionary that anytime
it incorporates that bump.
Anytime someone sniffs that elite level, they are the elite level.
Yeah.
I think the only times it's really hindered and lags is when it's someone that has bad draft capital.
Amon-Ra. That's the first one I came to mind.
Puka.
That's a good example.
Tank Dell. These are players where you could have bought in along the train ride, and if you bought 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, even though at that time it was an expensive price, it's probably a good trade.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
No, I'm gonna make a note in this doc to talk about those scenarios because I'm gonna think about this more. I'm gonna call it cookie cutter contingency plans.
I like it. That's a lot of C's going on.
I think you can map it out for the most part. But all right.
I feel like quarterback's going to be the most challenging.
Yeah, I think it's most challenging for when players lie smack dab in the middle. It's like they're kind of good. So like the Jahan Dotson example, I think is a tough one because you look at stats are pretty decent. Yeah, there's flaws, right? It's not amazing. It's not bulletproof.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you put up numbers. You look at like PFF grades and things of that nature. Some of like the film analytics, shall I say, reception, perception, all that stuff. To me, he seemed to be checking all the boxes during the offseason, right? You know, he was getting kind of hyped from the film community as well. Doesn't pan out. Just doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
As of right now.
And sometimes you get hit, very rarely, but you get hit with that Brandon Ayuk just out of nowhere doghouse season 2, where should be a very good player. All of a sudden is just doing nothing. And then comes back and is elite again.
But see, this is what I'm thinking. Like, that's like the more, it could be a DJ Moore, right? Yeah, maybe you sell DJ Moore in his going into his second season, and if you look back, you're like, dang, I sold a pretty good player. But the fact of the matter is that you can just buy whatever the DJ Moore is now for the same thing you sold him for. And if you're getting picks during the drafts, they usually increase in value. So you may be even able to get someone better. Which is like another reason why I just feel like I'm always leaning sell unless it's one of these late draft capital guys that are shooting up. You have to wait because if you sell too early, then you don't reach the moon. I've learned that one the hard way.
Yeah.
QBs are tough.
Yeah. You're making me think here, though, because normally I am the one that, like, if I see glimmers of hope, I'm probably selling. Like, if I'm getting feelers out for the guys and they're doing, like, okay, I'm probably selling. But I don't know.
But the reason I'm selling is simply because, okay, if we want elite level production, I can sell. Who's my nasty rookie pick? I drafted someone at 108 and he smashed. Give me a name.
Zay Flowers.
Zay
Addison.
Okay, yeah, Zay Flowers, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I want production, come this offseason, I sell Zay Flowers for whatever the slightly above market price he is right now. So what is that? A first and a second? A mid first?
Probably.
and a
Yeah.
late second, something like that.
Hmm.
I think in this draft, like probably what, like 106.
Yeah, he'll probably be somewhere
I mean,
around there. I
maybe,
mean,
I don't
listen,
know. Yeah.
it's not going to be a perfect science, right? You're not going to just be able to trade
Mhm.
Zay Flowers for 106s, but that's probably around what he's worth. Well, then I could probably just go around and then get Devonte Adams way cheaper this offseason. I think he's going to start reaching that like late first type range, mid late first.
I think he kind of already has. At least I saw him go for like a later
Yeah.
first in different
Well,
rounds. And
I was looking at Bryce Young, trying to figure out what his value is, and there's keep trade cuts with it's Bryce Young kept, Keenan Allen traded, Devonte Adams cut. To give you a general idea of where he's probably valued.
I think ideally you would do that strategy more so with like a Drake London, like you were saying before, where you can get 2 firsts. I'm hoping that Zay Flowers enters a Drake London-esque territory come the offseason, and then you do something like that. But I mean, you could also just get a lesser sexy receiver for your second round for whatever, and then keep more of the proceeds, I shall say, from your rookie player. Because that's what I've been doing, man. I take rookie picks and then I sell them for slightly more, and then in my estimation, you can snowball value and then get really good QBs.
Yeah, it's been working for you so far.
That's what I want to do in every league, and then get the cheap veterans to fill it in between. But all right, you guys want to talk about anything else? Any other segments? Linus, you look like you're a little eager to say something over there.
no, that's I'm good on my end.
Yeah, I'm good.
I definitely want to look into this segment more. We got to do that. But yeah, if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Subscribe on the YouTube. We will catch you next Tuesday. Peace out.